thankful for it. I didn't feel very good yesterday evening. The Lord just kept me going on studies. I told Brother Tyler once again, I said, here we are again. We're in Sunday school, and the poor girls, we get through Ruth, and I love the book of Ruth. There's so much in the book of Ruth. We started this months ago, I believe, at this point. And I was just so blessed by reading through the book of Ruth myself. So blessed at looking at this young woman, how the Lord worked in her life. And we've studied it. And I just pray that the Lord would be with me as I preach this morning. I pray that we consider our ways and why we're here, what our purpose is for. Go to the book of Ruth in chapter number 3. If you've never really studied the book of Ruth, chapter 1 shows the sin of the family, the sin of a father and a mother who didn't stand steadfast and stay where they ought to stay. They were so far away from the Lord that the Lord took a father and his 2 sons because they wanted to go places that looked better. And let me just give you this as a chapter 1 captive. I think what you could say is that glitters isn't gold, is what chapter 1 and how you could summarize it. We as a people get too consumed with making things look good, making life look good, making our ways look good, making it look like we have everything together, making this false image of ourselves from social media to the way that we walk into church. We like to make sure that things look good. And so did they. And if you find yourself today living in all that glitters as gold mentality, you're going to find out that it isn't. That it's dangerous. So Naomi's the mother that lost her husband, her 2 sons, eventually loses her other daughter-in-law, Orpah. That's what happens in chapter 1. Chapter 2, we see young Ruth, who knows absolutely nothing. She goes and she gets busy being a young woman putting her nose to work and begins to provide for her mother-in-law and herself. Now, a span of 10 to 15 years has taken place from the start of chapter 1 to chapter number 2. We don't know, there are at least 10 years. We don't know about the amount of time before the first 10 years, before the deaths started to occur. So let's just say somewhere between 10 and 15 years. This young Ruth says in verse number 2 of chapter 2, let me now go to the field and glean ears of corn after him, in whose sight I shall find grace. Verse 3 says, and her hap, and this is midway through, and her hap was to be light on part of the field belonging unto Boaz, who was of the kindred of Elimelech. All of a sudden, in verse 6, we start to see that Ruth is identified as the Moabitish damsel. It's recorded in verse 7, in the middle of the verse, and hath continued even from the morning until now, that she tarried a little in the house. We start to see these personal characteristics of Ruth. She was a worker. She didn't know a thing. Verse 8, Boaz and Ruth begin to speak. And he says midway through the verse again, go not to glean in another field. He wants her to stay right where they're at. Neither go from hence, but abide here fast by my maidens. Boaz would then go on. See, it was customary culture in the nation of Israel. There was 3 ways that the poor people could feed themselves. When they cut into a field, they would leave the corners. That was for them. Anything that dropped, that they were not allowed to go back and pick up. Anything that they left standing, they had to leave standing. Those are the 3 ways the poor folks could feed themselves. Boaz goes on to continue to show Ruth grace in the fact that he says he allows her to just go reap with his young men. He feeds her, he gives her water, he sends her with more than she needs. Naomi, here at the end, in about verse 20 of chapter 2, Naomi starts to see, Naomi's remembering how the Lord takes care of his people. She says in verse 20 of chapter 2, and Naomi said unto her daughter-in-law, blessed be he of the Lord who hath not left off his kindness to the living and the dead. And Naomi said unto her, the man is near of kin unto us, one of our next kinsmen. And Ruth the Moabitess said, he said unto me also, thou shalt keep fast by my young men, until they have ended all my harvest. And Naomi said unto Ruth her daughter-in-law, it is good, my daughter, that thou go out with his maidens, that they meet thee not in any other field. So she kept fast by the maidens of Boaz, to glean unto the end of barley harvest, and of wheat harvest, and dwelt with her mother-in-law. Let's go to the Lord in prayer before we go any farther. Our Heavenly Father, Lord, as we open up the words this morning, we pray, Lord, that you would be with us as we, Lord, just begin to speak for you, Lord, that we may speak humbly and yet boldly. Lord, that we would speak clearly, and Lord, with the authority that comes from Scriptures, that we may live our life for you. Lord, I just pray that you'd help us and go with us. Lord, be with us as we worship you this morning. Lord, may we worship in spirit and in truth. Lord, go with us, stir us up. Lord, revive us in Jesus' name. Amen. You're going to start seeing qualities in Ruth, in this young woman that didn't know anything. She didn't use an excuse that she was a Moabitish woman. She didn't use an excuse that she didn't know the culture of the nation of Israel. You start to see God-given qualities in her that start to come out. In verse 23, it says, she kept fast by the maidens. She stayed where she was. She stayed there each and every day, day in and day out, until it was done, and she didn't worry about what was going to happen to them when the harvest was ended. She stood still, right where she was supposed to be. Too often, we're worrying about the harvest being over and what's going to happen next. We're worried about the wrong things. I do this too often in my own life. We're looking to 2 months down the road, 2 years down the road, 20 years down the road, and we're not worried about doing what we're supposed to do today. Ruth had this figured out, and she didn't know anything. In chapter 3, it says, then Naomi, her mother-in-law, said unto her, my daughter, shall I not seek rest for thee, that it may be well with thee? I explained to our girls in Sunday school, I said, Naomi is just doing what every parent wants for their children. security, a safe haven. Ruth has worked so hard. Ruth is a woman of social awareness. She's described later on in chapter 11, verse 11, as a virtuous woman. Now, how does a Moabitish woman become a virtuous woman? She can't know anything, right? She can't be brought up right. Can't be brought up in church. By God's grace. The next several verses of discord here, or of explanation, I would say, Naomi goes in and she goes in to speak to Ruth about what's going to happen next, because Ruth didn't know anything. She didn't know about a kinsman redeemer. The next 4 verses, Ruth will then go in and explain the step-by-step process of Naomi explains to Ruth what Ruth should do. There's nothing wrong with Ruth going into where Boaz was sleeping. It was customary, and you can find it in Deuteronomy chapter 25, verses 5 through 10. You can see how that the widow was to go into the next of kinsmen when they're sleeping and uncover a corner of their bed and their feet and wait. We find here in later verses in chapter 3 that Boaz was afraid. It's dark. He can't see. His feet are uncovered. Who is this? They know the custom. It's believed because Boaz says in verse number, 10 and 11, he says, my daughter, twice, meaning that he was several generations older than Ruth, at least 2. He says, my daughter, to her twice. As he's speaking to her, I'll do what you have to do, what you require, as he says. In verse 9, after she makes herself known to him, he goes on to say in verse 10, and he said, blessed be thou of the Lord, my daughter, for thou hast showed more kindness in the latter end than at the beginning, insomuch as thou followest not young men, whether poor or rich. And now, my daughter, fear not. Well, the only reason somebody tells you to fear not in conversation is when you're fearful. I want you to think about that. That's the only time that's going to come up. The poor girls in class have to hear this again. Not all of it, though. This is just the introduction. Our whole class, all 18 verses, was just the introduction. The Lord worked on me in another way. We're just getting the context set up. He says, I will do to thee all that thou required, for all the city of my people doth know that thou art a virtuous woman. How in the world does an entire city know that some Moabite woman is a virtuous woman? I said, what is a virtuous woman? Do you even know what a virtuous woman is? It's a priceless jewel, precious, set apart. It's different from everyone else. Ladies, you don't have to be raised in church to become a virtuous woman. You don't have to have the best upbringing. You don't even have to know it all. She was still being explained things. But do you know what the biggest part that you find? I would say 2 of the most definitive qualities that you see in Ruth as a virtuous woman. Number 1, she wasn't afraid to stand still when commanded. And number 2, she wasn't afraid to get up and work. She didn't push things aside for tomorrow. She didn't wait on this or wait on that. She got busy. From the very start, when they made it back to Bethlehem, Judah, and everybody said, oh, is Naomi? And she says, call me not Naomi, call me Mara, for the Lord has dealt with me bitterly. From that very point, she knew nothing, but she knew to get busy. The first step, ladies, to being a virtuous woman is to get busy and not make excuses. And again, that's not even my message. That's just what the Lord gave me out of that, is to get busy. You know how hard it is to get busy? Let me tell you, it's real hard to get busy when the devil's distracting you. It's real hard to do what you ought to do when the devil's after you. As we keep going, we see the customary of the next several verses and how things come to play. Boaz tells her to tarry in the night. And I love this. Tarry this night, and it shall be in the morning that if he will perform unto thee the part of a kinsman, well, let him. Who's Boaz talking to? There was someone even nearer of kinsman. I'll just reiterate it to the two girls in class. You go study out that word well, and we'll talk about it next week. Because I believe that there's some significance in this verse that Boaz had a love for Ruth, not an obligation. Just as Christ has a love for us. Boaz says, Lord liveth, lie down to the morning. She lay at his feet until the morning, and she rose up before one could know another. That meant it was dark. It was early. And he said, let it not be known that a woman came to the floor. And he said, bring the veil that thou hast upon thee, and hold it. And when she held it, he measured 6 measures of barley, and laid it on her, and she went into the city. Now I want you to pay attention to these last 3 verses. And when she came to her mother-in-law, she said, who art thou, my daughter? And she told her all that the man had done to her. And she said, these 6 measures of barley gave he me. For he had said to me, go not empty unto thy mother-in-law. Now we get Naomi speaking. Naomi says, after all of this conversation with Ruth, then said she, sit still, my daughter. Sit still is the title of the message this morning. We don't want to sit still. We don't want to sit still because it's not in our control if we sit still. We don't want to sit still because we get to the point where we realize there's nothing we can do. Ruth was declared a virtuous woman. She had worked so hard. You can find back in chapter 2, around verse 18, she at meat or to eat with Boaz and all of his servants. And she's so wise. And women, this is a characteristic of a godly, virtuous woman. I believe it's in verse 18. You can find it specifically if I'm wrong. She sat down to eat and drink after she was welcomed to do that. And she got up. As soon as she had all that she needed, she got back to work. And I've touched on this point already, that oftentimes we don't have enough social awareness to know when it's time to get up from the table. We want to tarry and have conversation and do this and do that. Ruth had more social awareness than the average woman and the average man. And I'm not saying that to be mean. The Lord has just really stirred me up as we've studied in Ruth. We've got to ask the Lord for that kind of help. We're the kind of people that want to sit still at the table during the conversation, but not sit still when the Lord is working for us. Do you think that Ruth, in any regard, was afflicted in the last 10 years of her life? I do. I think she suffered great affliction. I don't know how it can be any worse than losing your spouse. My grandfather and my grandmother, both, with young children, lost their spouses. My grandfather watched his wife suffer in a hospital for 3 weeks after being burnt in the fire, and my uncle pulled his mother at 12 years old from the burning house. Pulled his little sister from the burning house. Pastoring his first church in Traverse City, Michigan. He watched his wife sit in the hospital for 3 weeks until she went into cardiac arrest and passed away. My grandmother, most of you don't know this, but my grandfather, Willard Johnson, was a preacher. From what I've been told. I should say from what my grandmother told me. Goes off to the war, deals directly with Agent Orange, comes back. He's home just long enough to see his son born and passes away. Folks, I can't tell you what's worse than losing your spouse because I don't know, I never have. But I've been around people that have. I physically watched husbands and wives die in front of me. She suffered great affliction. Yet she had the faith to stand still. We struggle to stand still. Why do you struggle to stand still? I'll tell you why I struggle to stand still, because I feel like I can do something about it. But I think here's the biggest reason why we struggle to stand still. Because we don't want to be alone with our thoughts long enough to be convicted or changed. And that's all of the devil, folks. If you're here and you're saved today, and you can sing that song and look at what Jesus has done when he says, I gave my life for thee. You ought to have something to stand still and think about. My precious blood I shed, that thou mightst ransom be from the dead. That ought to give us something to stand still on. Or sit still, whichever way you want to look. She had done all that she could do. Now she had to wait to be redeemed by Boaz. If you're here today and you're suffering great difficulty, if you're not living the way that you should be living, which if I say that I'm going to get right down onto where we live, I think it includes the majority of us. I don't think that we're capable of sitting still. Because it hurts. If you can sing that song, you have to understand why you can sit still. You know, sitting still is really hard. As of recently, I've had some things I've had to sit still on. And it's not easy. But I have to leave it with the Lord. Why are we so afraid to just sit still? In Exodus 14, we know the account. Brother Wayne just preached on it, far better than I'll ever preach on it. The Israelites have left. They've already lost the fact that God's blinded the Egyptians, led them through the darkness, led them to the sea. And they get out and they record here, if we pick up in verse 10, and when Pharaoh drew nigh, the children of Israel lifted up their eyes, and behold, the Egyptians marched after them. And they were sore afraid, and the children of Israel cried out unto the Lord. And they said unto Moses, because there are no graves in Egypt, thou hast taken us away to die in the wilderness. Wherefore hast thou dealt with us to carry us forth out of Egypt? Is not this the word that we did tell thee in Egypt, saying, let us alone, that we may serve the Egyptians? For it had been better for us to serve the Egyptians than that we should die in the wilderness. They didn't want to sit still in the wilderness. You know, John the Baptist was into the wilderness specifically to preach repentance. He wasn't led into the big city of Jerusalem. He wasn't led into Rome. Didn't make a whole lot of sense why he'd be preaching in the wilderness. Sure does. You and I live in the wilderness. We get stuck in the wilderness. The wilderness doesn't seem fair. It doesn't seem right. It's not understood. We can't see past it because it's so deep and dense and unexplainable. And the only one who's ever going to lead you out of the wilderness is the same one that will save your soul or has saved your soul. You know, when you're in the wilderness, you don't know which way's up or down. I remember watching a documentary, I don't know, within the last few years, of a plane that went down in the jungle of Peru. And the only ones to survive was a 13-year-old girl, her 10-year-old sister, and I think 2 other siblings. The youngest was a 10-month-old little boy. This 13-year-old girl kept her siblings alive for 6 weeks in the jungle. Do you know how dense the jungle was? The American military and the Peruvian military were flying helicopters with their grandmother's voice because they thought the kids were hiding. And this jungle was so dense, the kids were less than a half a mile from the most highly trained individuals in this world, and they couldn't find them. Helicopters flying 200 feet above them, they couldn't hear them. So you think your life in the wilderness of your jungle is going to be dense and difficult? You better believe it. You think you're promised a clean path out? No. Children of Israel are complaining about the wilderness, which we know is a lie. And Moses says unto them, to the people in verse 13, fear ye not, stand still, and see the salvation of the Lord. Sometimes that fear is of yourself. And Moses said unto the people, fear ye not, stand still, and see the salvation of the Lord, which he will show you today. For the Egyptians whom ye have seen today, ye shall see them again no more forever. I think we have a hard time standing still. We try everything we can to be in control. Following after the Lord is submitting to His will, whatever it may be. Whose fault was it that the Israelites were even in Egypt? The jealousy of some brothers. I'm not taking away God's sovereign plan. Whose fault was it? Yet they want to stay there and serve the Egyptians? This is the same people that said, we missed the fish and the garlics and the leeks and the cucumbers and the onions. We missed the food. We missed these things. Oh, that's what we can think of. Where is your thoughts today? It's not about, how do I want to say it? I want you to see Jesus in the message. I want you to see Him as I see Him, and as I see my lack, my inability, my fears, my frustrations, my anxieties, my difficulties. I have to leave those with Him. I have to be able to stand still. Sit still. Wait on the Lord. Let me ask you a question. How many of you in this room right now know when you're going to die? How many of you in this room know the next time you're going to be sick? How many of you know the next time your car won't start? The next, oh man, I don't have the money to pay this bill, comes through. The next greatest difficulty will face your life. One of the hardest things for me as a pastor is seeing people go through great difficulties. I can't stand it. I can't fix it. And I'm not okay with everybody pretending like everything's okay. That's what we do. Meanwhile, instead of pretending like it's okay and sitting here, you do what I did for years. And you try to take matters into your own hands and do things and fix things and manufacture how these things can be fixed and what control you have until you get to the point that you have none. No ability. It's out of reach. And you must stand still. I love it how Naomi, who lost her family, her means, her life. I love how Naomi, who by all purposes made all the wrong decisions in life, took her young daughter-in-law that's worked so hard for her, and she says, "Sit still, my daughter." Her faith began to be demonstrated by her trust that her God was going to do something. Let me ask you the next question. How long do you have to sit still? What if you have to sit still for a really long time? It's the same faith and trust in the Lord to sit still. If it's 10 seconds, 10 years, or for the rest of your life. Who else do you want to trust in? Do you know what? This entire world is miserable. You got people that are so fear-induced and so panic-induced, they're going, "Oh, diesel's $5.49 a gallon. What are we going to do? Going up. We can't afford it. President Trump just said he's running for office again. Oh, they're not going to let him run." And we get so caught up in this world and in the fears of this world that we forget completely to stand still. Brother Wayne, talking about this passage, you see two types of the people of the nation of Israel. Two types of people. And you see this nation of Israel, and you see them get delivered and walk on dry land all night long as the rivers are miles and miles apart, as Brother Wayne figured out, and I loved that. You know, nobody ever does justice to show the miracle that God actually did. And that's what a miracle feels like when you stand still. God shows you that He can do the impossible. He shows you that He has the power to do all things. But you can't see that if you don't stand still. You can't see the impossible done if you're not paying attention. And you won't see the impossible done if you don't realize that you can't do it. That it's going to take you to let go and you to go to Him so that He may work for you in whatever capacity. And I want you to make sure, if you're a note taker, you write this down. It may not be the way you like it. You have money problems? Guess what? You might never be a millionaire. And you just might have money problems for the rest of your life. That's called standing still. And watching Him provide in the times when He should. You have marriage problems? And you get to see the moments when He provides, when you don't think He should. You feel like a poor, wretched sinner, as you should, as I do. And you think, "Lord, why would you choose me? Why did the Lord choose me to preach and pastor?" I don't know. But there's a cause to stand still and just let Him work. The problem is sometimes, and oftentimes, I think what we do is we identify people that we see that are just running in circles. Right? Yeah, just go ahead and point the finger, everybody. Go ahead and point the finger at who you think is running circles today. I would venture to say that we all are, but it's easier to point our finger at somebody else. You know what happened for the nation of Israel to cross the Red Sea? Keep reading. And it says, "Fear ye not, stand still, and see the salvation of the Lord. And we will show you today, for the Egyptians whom ye seen today, ye shall see them again no more forever. And the Lord shall fight for you, and ye shall hold your peace. And the Lord said unto Moses, Wherefore cry unto me? Speak to the children of Israel that they go forward." Here's what I want you to understand today as we close. You can't pinpoint what someone else needs. You can't, as we even used, and you can make application to the verse on Wednesday night, you can't be in your neighbor's house trying to tell them how to live if you're not willing to do what you should be doing in the first place. You can't look out there and see people and think, oh, they're spinning in circles. I believe we all are. I believe we all need to go forward. The commandment Moses was given to the people was speak to the people that they go forward. The people had to stand still so they could see the salvation of the Lord. You know, if the people weren't standing still, do you think they would have appreciated if they would have looked? They saw the river or the sea. They saw the difficulty. They needed to see Moses speak to the people and say, go forward. Would the people have appreciated it if they weren't paying attention enough to watch the Red Sea go back for miles? Wherefore criest thou unto me? Speak unto the children of Israel that they go forward. Listen, if we are ever going to go forward, it's going to take the you individually. It's going to take everybody going forward. You can put that as a meaning as to whatever you want. But let me just simplify it this way. You can't stand still, sit still. One of my greatest burdens as the pastor of this church, because that's where the Lord has called me, to this church. One of my greatest burdens for the people of this church is oftentimes you're more worried about each other than you are about yourself. We can't have revival because you're not where you're supposed to be. You're not ready to sit still or stand still because you're not looking at yourself. And if we're ever going to experience true revival, true change, true blessing, true growth, then quit looking at everybody else and start looking at yourself. You've got to give it up. I can't tell you what's going to happen to you next. I don't know the next difficulty you're going to have. I don't know the next blessing you're going to have. I don't know your trials. And I can't even tell you that I know your heart, because I don't. But I can sure see your faces. And apart from you just giving up and leaving it with the Lord completely, you will not experience revival. I think about the song, I've said it in invitations before. Troublesome times are here, making men's hearts to fear. That's it. I know who knows the times. I don't know about tomorrow. It may bring me poverty. But I know who holds tomorrow. And I know who holds my hand. Proverbs 57. In the shadow of thy wing will I make my refuge until these calamities be overpast me. Each one of these passages leads you back to Jesus Christ. And what we should be saying is, thy will be done, Lord. You know what we get fearful of? We get fearful of things that we don't like, of things that we get uncomfortable about, of things that scare us, of things that are out of our control, of things that we worry may happen. But if we just get down to looking at the Lord and saying, whatever your will be done, Lord, just help me to serve you. I use the explanation for me. One of the greatest difficulties, I'll share with you, one of the greatest difficulties that I've gone through in the last several months has been, what if I lose my job again? Even getting down to the point where, Lord, you provided me more time to study, more time to be home, more time to be with my family than I ever have been, more time to serve you. Lord, what if you take it away or cause me to lose my home or cause me to lose these things? Thy will be done. I'll learn something out of it. And I'll be far better than I am now. In whatever difficulty that you're going through, thy will be done. Whatever you have, Lord, just give me joy to serve you. Stand still and see the salvation of the Lord. Don't worry about each other. You worry about you. Let's all stand.